My name's Kevin. I'm an alcoholic. That's probably some good advice. My sobriety date is January 26, 2007. I did meet Steve 15 years ago, and it was probably almost 10 years before that when I first met him, and met a lot of these other guys that were here too then at that time, and was ready to get sober, but I wasn't willing. So it took me a little while to come to that conclusion, and I'll get to that in a few minutes. I do sponsor other guys, and I have a sponsor. So what I like to do is I like to open with a quote from one of our late great American philosophers, Hank Williams Sr. And he said, "There's a lot of good ideas in a pint, not so many in a quart." So I can relate to that. It always had big expectations and never quite panned out. Grew up in a small town in Pennsylvania, a backwoods town. I don't know if you know any Amish people, but we were surrounded, farming community and Amish people, and people driving buggies, and no stoplights. You didn't even have to stop at the stop signs if you didn't want to. So I still struggle with that today, but I'm getting better. Growing up, I was the third of four children. My father worked as a farmer, but he had another job as well. He worked all the time, and he expected us to do the same. We didn't have a television for the early part of I guess 8 or 9 before we even had a black and white television, and spent a lot of time outside. Parents always tried to get us to work. Went to church on Sundays. They tried to teach us right from wrong, and they did the best they could. I wouldn't say that they were real overly loving and protective. They pretty much just cut us loose. They were tough. They just tell you come in with a cut or something. They just say rub it off and close the door on your way back out. They want us outside. Mom didn't want us wrecking the house, and that was good because they worked hard, and I thought growing up that we didn't have much, and looking back today, I had a great childhood. It was just a different perspective. Growing up, I couldn't wait to get out of there. I don't know. I'm guessing there was that emptiness inside me that a lot of you guys feel, or most of you, or possibly all of you. Something was always going to be better somewhere else. Did sports, played, and had fun when we were kids. And I think it was I was about 10 years old when my dad came home, and he brought us a couple ponies. So we went out there, my brothers and sisters, and we rode those ponies. And about after 2 days, my brothers and sisters had enough. But me, I was gone. I was wide open at that point because I had learned a new freedom and a new happiness. That. I don't know whether it was adrenaline or whether what it was. I know today that the beliefs that I had then are different than what I have now. I know that God's only here in the present, and if you're riding a horse or a pony, you better be in the present, or it's not going to last long. And so I don't know. I think there was a lot to do with that at the time too, but that was way over my head. All I knew that it was fun, and I could get away from that farm, and had about 1,000 acres of woods, behind the house. It wasn't really a mountain; they were like the foothills of Pennsylvania, and that was my backyard, and that's what I did. It had a couple reasons. It got me out of a lot of work. I started taking lessons and showing at an early age. And my mom said something one time. She said, if you're going to go to the show this weekend, or the end of this month or whenever it was, that you need to ride that pony every day. I said, okay. I was all in at that point. I'd ride in the afternoon and come back after the chores were done, and it flew. So I got to start thinking at an early age that maybe I was the chosen one, you know. It's a thought that still runs through my mind today, but I know today that that's just ego, and my ego shows up in all different forms, but it usually resides up there in my head somewhere, and I have tools to combat that today. So, you know, school wasn't really a big deal. I could make the grades and spent a lot of time looking out the window waiting for school to be over so I could take off, you know. And it kind of kept me out of a lot of trouble, you know. Friends, you know, my brother actually started drinking at a fairly early age, and I just thought that was the dumbest thing I ever heard. Turns out it had a lot of benefits for a while. I remember in high school, back up just a little bit. By the time I turned 16, I had been riding that pony and graduated to horses, and you know, started racing some of these Arabians and stuff in some, you know, little cow pastures here and there. And by the time I turned 16 and got my driver's license, I had a job at a farm about a half hour away where I was exercising racehorses in the morning before school. And the school, they thought that was a good idea too, so they didn't make me have to come in till lunchtime. And here again, you know, these things just keep falling in place, and things are working out, you know. In high school, I went to a few parties. They used to have keg parties out there in the fields and a big bonfire, and I'd try to drink that beer, and it would be foaming, and I could barely stomach it. Like someone else in this room, I poured some of that stuff out, you know, just to make it appear like I was drinking it. But so I never really had the effects produced by alcohol. And the day after I graduated high school, I was off to Atlantic City Racetrack and had a job there, and I was going to be a jockey, and that didn't work out quite the way I wanted. But a year and a half later, I was a professional steeplechase jockey. I had caught on with an outfit. I was riding mostly lower level, slow, bad jumping steeplechase horses. I finally got a break and had a ride at one of the big tracks on the East Coast, and I was gung ho. I was excited, and my inexperience and my enthusiasm cost that horse's life. Sent me to the sidelines for a short period of time, and started rethinking my career path, you know, wondering, man, I might have made a bad choice, you know, this could be real, you know. Got back to work, and you know, got this gnawing feeling, you know, that maybe I don't measure up, you know. It was a thought that I had from time to time, but sometimes at horse shows, you know, you get ribbons and people pat you on the back, and you kind of forget the troubles and the things that you had getting there, and so I'm at the period where I'm trying to get over this minor setback, or setback of sorts, and it was at that point that I went out with some friends, you know, to you know, just kind of get away, have a couple drinks, and see what it was about. You know, I was 21, and a day or two past 21, and they talked me into going, and it was that night that I realized what I'd been missing my whole life, you know. Somewhere between that second and third drink, the feelings that I didn't measure up, and that fear and that insecurity, that all melted away. You know, I was in a safe place, and I think in my case I was probably alcoholic my whole life, but it just didn't trigger until that night, because that mental obsession began then. I mean, I did not become a full-grown drunk. I didn't even... I didn't even start drinking daily, you know, but what I had was the thought in my mind that what would sometimes happen when you'd find out way ahead of time when you were going to race a horse. We used to race in the weekends pretty much in the spring and the fall, and in the summer we'd race all week at the major tracks. And usually by Monday the entries would come out, and you'd know what you were riding on Saturday or Sunday, and you had that whole week to plan and think about that. And for me, my mind would go crazy, and my thought was, man, I'll go out to the bar, have a couple drinks. Those thoughts will clear right up, and before you know it, it's going to be Saturday, and I'm going to be golden again, because it never failed that when I'd get on the horse, that things would just start to click, the adrenaline would kick in or whatever it was, but those things would pass, and I would be able to fulfill my obligations, and and was able to do what I was supposed to do. Over the next couple years, with alcohol is a bit of a help, and sometimes a hindrance. It's tough. Friday night, it's maybe a little harder to get rid of those thoughts, and alcohol for me started to be a little unpredictable. If I drank too much, I'd be hungover. I'd be suffering, and so I found some other things that I won't talk about too much here tonight. But there were some outside issues, and sometimes there were a lot of outside issues. But I was really just self-medicating, trying to get me to the place where I could make some money, and I could fuel the party, and I could be the big shot. And that's what happened over the next couple of years. And with the benefit of alcohol and some other things, and some breaks that went my way, I was able to catch on with one of the top outfits, and I seemed to be a young man that was going places. Things were going good, as good as could be expected, but my life is a roller coaster, I'm hiding, I'm lying, I'm hiding, trying to cover all these things up, and trying to juggle and keep all these balls in the air, and the fear keeps creeping back in, and I'm somewhat successful, so I have some money rolling in, and these things that I thought growing up, that these material things, a nice car and a pocket full of money, and maybe a girlfriend every now and then that was going to make me feel complete. They were falling short. The only time I really felt good was I was under the influence of something, and that was getting to be a struggle. Trying to keep that under control. Back up just a little bit. When I was 12 years old, I was out riding in the woods, and I had an accident, and I broke my leg, and I laid out there in the woods till about nearly midnight before I was rescued, and I had a somewhat of a spiritual experience that night where I knew things weren't going wrong or weren't going right, but I knew things weren't that bad either. I thought there was a chance that my leg might be mangled beyond repair. The first rescuers that actually came to extract me realized that wasn't going to happen, and they had to go get help. But it was crazy because I had this feeling that I was being, comforted, held. I noticed that everybody else was struggling to see. It was dark. It was 9 o'clock on a summer night in the woods, and they were struggling with flashlights and cigarette lighters and things, and I could see fine. It was the strangest thing. I can't explain it today, but it's nice to know that it happened, and gives me something to think about, and it helped me find that relationship that I have today. But so they extracted me from those woods, and I had surgery that night, and the next day I mentioned to a few adults this experience that I had, and they said, "Well, man, you must have just been in shock," So I never mentioned it again. I put that inside, but I remember that night as if if it happened right now. But so that was one of those first things. The minor setback. Coming back from that, I had fear for a while. Then my parents, they had the bright idea to put me on a horse one time when I still had the cast on my leg. And the horse wasn't real thrilled about that, and that didn't do anything to calm my fears, I'll tell you that. But so fast forward, I'm riding races. I'm probably 23 years old, and I have one of the bigger days of my career. It's coming up. There's a big race meeting, and I got mounts in every race but one, and 3 favorites. So this is my day. I'm gonna show everybody what I can do. And on that very first horse, I'm going down to the start, and for some reason, this adrenaline's not kicking in. The horse is feeling good. He's big and strong, and I'm looking over. I'm thinking, man, I just got to guide him around here, and then they're going to find me in the winner's circle. And but I get this voice, and at the time I thought it was in my helmet. I didn't want to believe that it was in my head. And it said, "You're going to die." What? You're going to die. And so I did one of those foxhole prayers. Not immediately. I had to hear this voice a few times, and I was vague. I hadn't touched base with God in a long time, but I knew He was there. I knew there was a power there, and so I come up with this prayer. Let me get through this, and I'll see if I can I'll straighten my life out, I think, is what the prayer turned out to be. And as I came to, they were loading me in a pickup truck to take me to an ambulance. And I'm thinking, man, that praying doesn't work. So here we go again. Fears are taking off. Praying doesn't work, but I know alcohol does. And so I made a vow that day that I was never going to be underserved, before I got there. And that was pretty much the case. I didn't mess up too many things. I have one story, and it kind of goes with some of the things that it says in the book. How they say that alcoholic will sometimes put his nose to the grindstone. He'll work very hard for a project, and then just a short time before he'll take a drink, and it'll just fall all apart. Well, I get a call to ride a horse in Virginia, so I got to get in the car and drive like 4 hours. And I also have to drop about 8 pounds. So I got the car heater on, I got a sweatsuit on, and a little brandy helps with, getting the sweat rolling. And this is another one of those horses that anybody could ride. I just steer him around, we pick up the money, and we come home. Yeah, you guys laugh. But so anyway, the race comes off without a hitch. We're cruising along, we're second, and everything's going fine. We got less than 1 round to go, and the horse that's in front of me falls and rolls over right in front of me. And I swerve and I avoid him, and the next thing you know, I don't know where I'm going. I'm lost. I'm off course. I get disqualified, and I didn't even have that many drinks, guys. But there it is, That didn't make me an alcoholic. That was one of the things I look back that helped confirm the fact that I was alcoholic. I struggled with that when I came here, whether I was alcoholic or not. I don't struggle with that today. My career was not much after that. I think I was 24 and I retired. I like to say that I retired. They didn't renew my contract. So looking back in some inventories, I guess I got fired. But that took a while. But so I do one of those things that we do as alcoholics. I do a geographic, and I get in a car, and it's wintertime, and I don't know if you know anything about galloping horses in the winter in the north, but it is cold, and the ground's hard, and it's frozen, and sometimes, it looks like a potato field, the frozen clods, and so I jumped in the car, and I went to Louisiana. I knew that they needed help in the fairgrounds, and I didn't think much that it was a party city, because on the way there, I made a vow that I was not going to drink. I was going to do my best not to drink, because I didn't think alcohol had me yet. I knew it was a bit of a problem. So took me like 3 days to drive there. I wasn't really good at driving that well. 10 or 11 hours, I was ready to quit. So took a while to get there. Took me a while to find a job. It was a couple of weeks. But I was sticking it out, trying to stay sober. Didn't know anybody there at the time. And so it was a bit, it was easy. I got what they call a tack room. It's a little 12 by 12 square room. I know there's at least one person in this room that probably spent some time in one of those, and Brad was another one. So we had some similarities, but that's what they offer you, a little 12 by 12 room, and I was thinking, man, I came a long way, and I had some money, but I didn't want to spend it, So this lady rolls in with a couple of these big tractor trailer loads of horses from New York, and she's beautiful, and she's young, and she needs me. Or at least that's what I kept telling myself. But so I went and I made a point to be in the way and offer some help, and eventually. Eventually things worked out, and she came around to my way of thinking. The one thing that I could always do was ride a horse. I could ride a horse drunk or sober. I could ride a horse hungover. I could throw up and not even hit the horse. It's pretty good when you have a hangover. But there were other things that I found that were pretty good hangover cures. Some of those aren't around anymore, and. But they were nice, but they're in the past as well. So I catch on. We have a good meet. I stay away. I hide a lot of my things from her. I don't drink while we're there. We move back to Atlantic City with the horses, and things are taking off. We're winning races. We're getting new owners, and things are happening. We get back to Atlantic City though, and my test works. See, I'm not alcoholic, and maybe I can just drink a little bit, and I start at that point. But I'm really trying hard to control it. I'm trying to hide it. I begin lying immediately, and over the next few years, we bounce around. We go to California, fly back and forth there a few times, and things are going great. On the outside they look great. Relationships looks good on the outside, but I'm probably telling way more lies than she is, and she may have a few of her own, but that's not me to judge today. But we end up here in North Carolina. We came here just for the winter one time to rest some horses. We came from New York and came here, and she stayed. I went back to New York a few times, but. Left to my own devices, that was never going to work. Started a family here, and I think at the time, it seemed like a good idea, but having kids and trying to be a father and wanting to be a father, a good father and a good husband, I just got found out. I got exposed. I wasn't any of those things. I was just an alcoholic. I was a liar that could do a few things well. Bottom line, no. Kids are born, and I decide, yeah. My wife decides that we need some marriage counseling, and the marriage counselor, she thought that maybe I had a drinking problem, and I wasn't even honest with her. You know how we are. She thinks I should go to Alcoholics Anonymous, and she gives me a contact, and I wait about a couple weeks or a month before I go, and I go there, I meet the guy, I see him talking about a white chip, and surrender. I didn't pick up a white chip. I didn't even really know what was going on, but I listened a little bit, and I compared myself to everybody, and man, I totally jumped the gun. I'm not alcoholic. You guys are way worse than me. I never had a DUI. I came close I came close at least once. Back when I was drinking, the police officers, they would cut you a break. One time when they found me sleeping off the Belt Parkway in New York, and I don't really know how I got there, but I was far enough off the road in the mud flats that they thought I was going to be dead in the car and not drunk. So they were surprised when they saw me move. Apparently it was an area where if the car's there too long, it gets stripped, and that's where they dump bodies and things, but I had no idea of that. But I didn't get a ticket that night either, so I could have. So I come to Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'm sort of ready, but I'm not willing, and I bounce around. I stay. I can get sober. I can't stay sober. There's just no reason to stay sober. Man, that's painful. Not drinking. I tried different things. I tried not drinking. I tried, I didn't try the things in the book. I mean, things I tried were like different drugs and different things like that. I did try meditation. I went to some guru guy, and he was going to teach me how to meditate and hypnotize myself. And I did all that, and it sort of maybe almost worked for a little while, but nothing would work forever. And ended up coming here to the Primary Purpose Group, and I met some of these guys, and strung a few days together. Had a sponsor, but these steps, man, they looked like there was no way that they could solve the problems that I had. I think my biggest problem was that first step. That's not even it, it's over here. Yeah. Struggled with that first step for a long time. I'm still struggling with it. But, was I powerless over alcohol? I didn't drink that much. I did way more drugs than I did alcohol. And my life was unmanageable. Yeah, I would admit that my life was unmanageable while I was drinking. Come to find out, my life's way more unmanageable when I'm not drinking. It took me a long time to see that, but it seemed like I'd spent so much time to lying to everybody else, I lied to myself as well. Kids are growing up. I'm pulling away from this family. On the outside, it looks like I should have everything, but inside, I'm dying. I don't stay sober, and I'm not the guy that goes out and drinks and comes back and picks up a white chip. I'm out there 2, 3, 4, 5 years. Seeing you guys, and you keep getting better. When I first came in, we're meeting down there in the basement, down there in the far room, and Daniel's there, and he's new. I mean, every time I see him, he just keeps getting better. It's like, man. I'm getting worse, he's getting better. What's wrong with this picture, my perception has been skewed even in sobriety. I have to continue to look at myself today. January 1st, 2007, I guess, was not one of my finer moments. I don't really remember it. I sort of remember the night before New Year's Eve. The kids were at the age they wanted to stay up. I really wanted them to go to bed. Kind of in and out, trying to keep it together, and I'm struggling. I didn't do a lot of my drinking in the house, because then my wife could see it. I used to drink I had a workshop up at the barn, and would spend a lot of time in there. Hiding out, drinking, and at first when the kids were young, they would come, banging on the door, want to do something, and they just never knew what they were going to get. Was I going to be punishing? Was I going to be goofy? Was I going to embarrass them? I did that on occasion. But eventually they came, and they stopped. They left me alone, and that was what I used to think in my mind. That was one of the thoughts. One of these ego guys in my head tell me, if they just leave you alone, everything will be fine. If they just left me alone, I'd still be probably, drunk or dead or using in that workshop, because left to my own devices, I wasn't leaving. But after whatever happened, January 1st of 2007, my wife had enough, she realized that she made a big mistake, and though, sometimes, on the surface things looked like they were working, she'd had enough, and raising those kids and running a business was hard enough, that she thought she could do it by herself rather than with me. And I'd like to say I came to Alcoholics the next day, but it took me nearly 3 weeks, I started drinking and just going wide open, because now I could drink the way that I wanted, and like I hadn't been drinking the way I wanted, but I didn't have to lie about it, I didn't have to hide about it, but the problem was that it didn't work. Every now and then I'd get a little relief, but for the most part, these, my head was like three radio stations playing at the same time, nothing was coming in clear. And when something would come in clear, it would be that thought that, you're just a failure, your best thinking got you to where you're at right now, and you have nothing, my family's 500 miles, well, my family I grew up with is 500 miles, I have no brothers or sisters around here. I'm in North Carolina, and all my family here is gone, before long, my credit cards were gone too. Kind of put a little kink in my drinking, and the tab at the dope house was pretty long. I couldn't show my face there much either. So, and I knew you guys were here. That seed had been planted, and I made my way back. I've been beaten into a state of reasonableness. The book tells me that, and that's where I was. I had to get to that point, because getting to that point was the only thing that was going to take me out of the equation. And I was going to have to be willing to do these steps, and I really pretty much just had to be ready to believe that, to my innermost self, that I was alcoholic. And there's so many pages in this book that tell you how to come to that conclusion, But as my sponsor could tell you, that I was always looking for the gray area between the black and white, Why did that not apply to me? It applies to me today, and it has for the last 15 years. Did I do it perfectly? No. I was a lesson in frustration for me, probably for my sponsor, for my wife. I'll say this, with the family and things like that, I thought the only one I was hurting was myself. The closest people to me, the ones that hurt the worst. My parents didn't really know the full extent of everything that was going on. When I ended up making amends to those, they seemed a little surprised. So that just goes to show you I'm probably a pretty good liar, or maybe they're just not real observant. I don't know. So I came back here, and I got a sponsor immediately, and I sat in that room. I remember coming in and sitting down in the back row, and there was a girl there, and she told me that that she'd been saving that seat for me, and she was a good home group member, and you guys were here, I remember Wallace was here that night, and Daniel and Steve and guys, and Tom. I don't know if he was here that night, but eventually I got to meet him, and I got to realize that there was some really good sobriety here, and that really that all I had to do was do these things that were suggested, and for a while I was willing to do that. I remember like it was yesterday, being 30 days sober, roughly there, and going to Tom I's 50th anniversary. And that was a pretty big deal. There were 300 and some people, lined up there to shake his hand, and he took a few minutes to stop and talk to me, and had a few words of advice. They weren't the same words Steve gave me when he came up here, but along the same lines. They were from the heart, and I treasure those today. And And I appreciate those guys that helped me along. But I was one of those guys where I would, the book tells us we shouldn't rest on our laurels. And man, it's like, that's a good spot for me to rest. Things are going good. I want to take a break. I want to pat myself on the back. And trying to do that so much today. Started working with guys, not right away, because I felt like I was going to mess them up, and felt that I was going to be inadequate, that I didn't have anything that they needed, and I was probably right. I learned so much more after I was a couple of years sober, and by working with new guys, I had to get back and read the book. There'd been years when I had a book and I never opened it. I'm not really proud to say that today, but that was the truth. I took that first step. I did those steps with a sponsor. We went through the book, and it's the same way that I do with my guys today. We get on our knees, we pray, we take that inventory, and we try to find where we possibly could have been wrong. Much easier to do today. First time through was a bit of a trick. I'm not going to go through all the steps. You guys have a sponsor, hopefully, and you're doing that with them. I tried to get out of doing service work. I've done some here and there. I guess one of the big things that came to me was when I first was sober. And the book tells me, that I read it now and I realize, that after, you're going to go several directions after you get sober. You're going to jump back into the spiritual part, or you're going to go try to make money, or I'm not sure what else. But mine was to make money. I still had some skills left. I knew how to make money, and I was trying to manage my life, trying to be like that actor, trying to be the director, and not willing to let God take over every aspect of my life, willingness again. Things were going good, or to my perspective, they were going good. My wife ended up taking me back. Kids started to like me a little bit. Started spending time with them. Got better slowly. I noticed in one of the readings the other day in the daily reflection, it said something about wishing a long, slow recovery. Well, if anything, I've had a long, slow recovery, or up to this point. I learned to start doing things that I didn't want to do, Started taking a meeting to a jail, which I'd never been to jail, Did it because we needed guys on the rotation, and then I was asked to do it, and then I tagged along, and got asked to go to the prison and go down there. I remember talking to Daniel about it, and I said, "Man, Daniel, I've never been to prison." And he said, "Well, those guys, they know how to get in there." So it wasn't like they were looking for advice. It was kind of like one of those things in the book. They kind of either they give you the answer or they give you the question. They don't really. For me, it was one of those things that I had to look a little further into, and I got to go to that prison, and see what it was like. And after doing some inventory, I realized that I wasn't so different than those guys. Had the police shown up at my door at the wrong time, there's a good chance I could have been in there with those guys, I wasn't a big entrepreneur, but I didn't like to run out, and I thought those things were going to make me happy, and it seemed like the more I had, the more miserable I was, and these are things all that I've learned all since I've been sober, So today, what's it look like? We still do what we can. We do a Zoom meeting. We do the detox. I just went back and forth with the hospital the last couple of days because I lost my badge. So if I want to go in there, I have to go, and so I had to do some things. I had to be responsible today and take care. Could I got in there without a badge? There's a good chance, and but I took care of that stuff today. So, but start off my day, I read this book a lot more than I ever did, with the pandemic and the Zoom meetings and being stuck at home and then my wife got sick and then she got better and then something else, she got something else and so it's been a time, but all the answers are in this book, I know that today and if I can't find them, I got a sponsor and I pray several times a day. I do that inventory out of the book, upon awakening, when I retire at night. Been kind of getting, into this big deal with this meditation, trying to figure out how to do it. And one thing I figured out is you can't do it wrong. I looked in the dictionary and it said, it's sit quietly with a mindful thought, or sit quietly with no thought at all. So that kind of covers everything. Guess the idea is to sit quiet, But the drawback to that is every now and then something will come up that maybe I didn't clear up and just share one little thing. I was, I'm getting some things cleaned up, most of my amends have been made. I still have a few, and after some meditations over the last week or two, it looks like I have a few more that I need to look at. But my sponsor came to me one day, and we were just kind of talking, and he said, "Hey, how are you making out with that credit card debt?" I said, "Well, good." I said, "You won't believe what happened. The guy called me up, and he said, 'Hey, I'll make you a deal. You pay a third of that, and we'll let you off the hook. But you got to make it in 3 payments over the next 3 months.'" And I took care of it. I worked twice as hard. I saved as much as I could. I took money that I was supposed to be using other places, and I paid that off. And then my sponsor came by. He said, how are you doing that with that credit card debt? I said, "Oh, man, I took care of it." He said, "Well, what'd you do?" I said, "Well, I paid a third of it." And he said, "Well, that might not be enough." I said, "Well, the guy called me, and that was his idea. I was just listening." So, as most things, I didn't listen to my sponsor. I kind of thought, well, I was right, so the other day I'm meditating, and I get this thought in my mind, because I'm thinking I got these things cleared up. I'm almost done. Hope County tax guys, they're happy with me. The IRS, I had like a 15-year relationship with the IRS. But that was my fault because, I was trying to manage things. So I was taking money I was supposed to pay the IRS, and I was making farm payments, because I was going to sell it, and I was going to make $1 million. And, I had this all figured out. And best thing that could have happened is I could have, if I lost that farm that I was so desperately holding on to. But that remains to be seen. But so now I'm going to have to sit down with my sponsor and see what we have to do. And it looks like I'm going to have some more amends to make. And, because this universe is a strange thing. And I don't understand much of it. I don't understand how those steps can work. I think Dr. Bob thought the same thing. He was a very spiritual guy, and he tried really hard, and it wasn't until he ran into Bill, and Bill gave him the idea that, maybe we do these steps and we do it together. We can stay sober one day at a time. What a concept. Without that, none of us would be here tonight, So I do that prayer and that meditation, and I sit quietly, and things come to me, and during the day I'm at peace. Give me some directions on the 10th step, and that 10th and 11th step. I struggle with those a long time because they kind of look like the same thing sometimes. You see there's some inventory in the 11th step. That's supposed to be like prayer and meditation, but it looks like I'm taking some of my inventory. And I found out in the 12 and 12 that they can be taken separately, but if you take all 3 of them at the same time, it works even better. and that's probably the reason that they put a little bit of inventory into the 11th step. I don't know that you'll find it up there. You'll find it in here. I know just about where it's at, so if you have any questions, I could direct you to that later, because I'm starting to run out of time and I'm starting to run out of gas. But one thing that, my kids, my relationship with my kids and my wife today, where I try to stay present. I don't hide and lie and stay away from them. I try to stay present when I'm with them today. And a few weeks ago, I got the honor to ride with my daughter to, she was moving to Colorado, and I got to sit in the car with her for 8 or 10 hours every day and drive and let her drive, and it was pretty cool. I was able to stay present and I was able to stay focused, and I took my book and I did my prayers and my meditation, and we're driving out across Kansas, and the wind's blowing and there's trucks and stuff blowing over. Ended up shutting down the highway, but we didn't know it yet, and my daughter, she just wanted to drive because I guess she thought that I was a little shaky, because every now and then the gust of wind would hit you and you would shake. And she said, she asked if she could drive a little bit. So she started driving, and she realized that it was very windy. And then the truck started blowing over, and then she looked over and she said, "Dad, how can you eat a sandwich at a time like this?" I was hungry, I felt safe and protected, I knew we were doing whatever we needed to do. We ended up pulling over, and we weren't going to pull off the side of that highway because that was not going to be safe. We wound up at a little rest area, and realized that then the highway got shut down, and we got to sit there in the car and, felt it shaking, and tried to make a plan of action if the car blew over. And but we were good. And it's experience neither of us will forget today. And if I wasn't sober, I'd have missed it. So I'm going to wrap up. I got one thing I want to read here. And, we used to read this when we closed when I first came in. Well, when I came in 15 years ago, downstairs in that little room. And we used to close all our meetings like this, and I remember it like it was yesterday. It's first paragraph at the top of page 100. It says, "Both you and the new man must walk day by day in the path of spiritual progress. If you persist, remarkable things will happen. When we look back, we realize that the things which came to us when we put ourselves in God's hands was better than anything we could have planned. Follow the dictates of a higher power, and you will presently live in a new and wonderful world, no matter what your present circumstances." Thanks, guys.